After 2 years of cautious anticipation, the first official chapter of James Gunn's newly formed DCU kicked off with Superman. And while I don't really plan on going too deep into the film here, I really enjoyed the film quite a bit, and I think the film did exactly what it needed to do. Reintroduce Superman to the broader general audience. It wasn't just all about Superman though, it was about Clark Kent as a person, along with his entire world of characters and the dynamics that he has with them, especially with Lois. It was about crafting a lived-in world that was still deeply grounded into its characters. To me, it felt less like an end of an old era of DC, and more like an opening notes of something much bigger. And that something bigger is what I wanted to focus on today. Because as good as Superman was, what really excites me is what's coming next. And with the recent announcement of Man of Tomorrow, it seemed pretty damn fitting to talk about all of this now. If you liking everything I've been putting out recently, maybe hit that subscribe button. More fun stuff coming soon. So let's start with the most recent announcement, Man of Tomorrow, slated for July 2027. Can I just say how amazing it is for us to begin a sequel to a superhero film in that short of a time span? For some reason recently, longer waits for sequels have just kind of become the norm. I mean, Shang-Chi's been waiting almost 5 years at this point. But I'm super happy that we're getting this group of characters back so soon, cause damn near all the castings in my opinion were kinda perfect to a T, especially the main 3 leads. David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan were more or less everything I was expecting from them in their roles. The two of them just had crazy chemistry together, so I'm really interested to see how the relationship has progressed in the time in between these two films. And Nicholas Hoult might actually be the definitive Lex Luthor for me in live action. Like, I can't really see anyone else playing him in my head right now, which is pretty ironic seeing as he was the runner-up for Superman. But I really can't wait to see this fucking hater on my screen again. Like, I actually believe this Lex hates Superman enough to trap him with a baby. If this film was about reintroducing Superman to the modern audience, then this sequel feels like the perfect chance to expand the world even further. From the very small amount of info we actually know about Man of Tomorrow, it seems like this film will heavily focus on Superman having to begrudgingly team up with Lex Luthor to combat a greater evil. A lot of people have probably thought it by now, but yeah, I think Brainiac makes the most sense for a villain big enough to force these two into teaming up. I also kind of feel like whatever happens in this film will kind of end with Lex getting back into the public's good graces, and possibly leading to him running for president maybe? Yeah, sure, it happened in the comics, but it's kind of unrealistic for a convicted felon to become the president of the United States. I mean, am I right? Of course, while we're waiting for 2027 to come, we already got the return of the second season of Peacemaker airing right now. And honestly, 5 episodes in, that'd be the most entertaining live action comic book show I've seen in a good minute. Like most James Gunn projects, this show is masterfully blending its comedy with its incredibly character-driven arcs. John Cena in particular is really getting the chance to show off his acting chops this season. The same could also be said for the rest of the cast and their individual storylines happening this season. And I'm also super intrigued about everything about this other universe. And when I say everything, I mean everything. But what's really getting me excited about this new universe is its upcoming slate of projects coming out in 2026. Obviously, we got Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, based on the critically acclaimed book of the same name. We already saw a bit of her at the end of Superman, but I really can't wait for general audiences to see more of that contrast between Clark and Kara due to their very different upbringings. I'm not gonna go too deep into like anything that happened in the comic, but it's a very interpersonal story that gets pretty crazy at times. So I really can't wait to see that story unfold on the big screen. And I also can't wait to see a lot of that cosmic art translated. It's also just nice to get more comic book films with female leads. I'm incredibly intrigued by the show Lanterns. A true detective style mystery series featuring 2 space cops investigating a mystery on Earth is just a really interesting concept to me. A lot of folks are kind of upset that the series is taking place on Earth instead of like in space. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand that sentiment, but at least for me, a lot of my favorite Green Lantern stories, as well as just a lot of them in general, take place on Earth, so that really didn't bother me all that much, to be honest. It also kind of just makes sense to start a little smaller with this specific IP before actually expanding into the grander intergalactic setting, especially after the Ryan Reynolds version kind of ruined the character for a lot of people. I know, right? I'm a big fan of both creators' previous works, so I'm really interested to see how this all plays out. Also, shouts out Coach Chandler for playing Hal Jordan. Clayface is probably the biggest curveball out of what's expected to come out next year. From the outside looking in, he's not really the type of character, let alone villain, that you would expect to get their own film. But I guess that just goes to show how good the script Mike Flanagan wrote was. A straight up R-rated body horror film with a pretty tragic and sympathetic villain at the center is a super compelling idea. And it once again shows how creator-driven James Gunn's DCU is shaping out to be. But that idea of creator-driven projects seems to be at the core of everything that DC is doing right now. It's not just the same flavor of superhero movies over and over again. When you look at how James Gunn's DCU is being built, it really feels like the polar opposite of how superhero universes usually get put together. Like, you can really tell a creative is at the helm of all of this, and not just some studio business exec. Instead of rushing things to create a big team-up film like the previous DC attempt did, or literally filming films without finished scripts, Gunn's made it clear that good finished scripts come first. The creator's vision comes first. Every project is allowed to have its own unique tone and identity. Because at the end of the day, comic book film shouldn't be its own genre. It should be a medium to tell whatever story the creator has to tell. And right now, all of that just feels like such a breath of fresh air. Especially compared to Marvel, who I cannot emphasize enough are literally filming a film right now as the script is being written. Everything we've seen so far from this new DCU feels less like a movie franchise and more like a comic book line, honestly. One where every series has its own flavor, but still contributes to the larger universe. Of course, the one wrinkle in all of this so far is probably Batman. Unlike Superman, or the Lanterns, or even Wonder Woman, whose script is being written right now, prayers we get a Wonder Woman who can actually act.
I need you to give me the stone!
Batman currently has a very successful, already established and fleshed out iteration currently existing. Honestly, I'm kinda on two minds regarding this whole Batman dilemma. Because on one side, Robert Pattinson's Batman is more or less universally beloved at this point by the general audience. His Batman also just lines up well with Cornsworth's Superman. In terms of age, as well as both their first films just having similar themes about discovering that the parent that you idolized wasn't as perfect as you thought they were. Also the challenges of being a symbol of hope in such a cynical world. I mean, they even both have sequels coming out in 2027. And yeah, the Gotham we saw in the Batman seemed like a really grounded place. But that Batman's also really early into his career. And I mean, nobody who watched Iron Man in 2008 thought he'd be fighting a purple alien 10 years later. The biggest concern I've heard and actually agree with is that you can't really see that Batman being intellectual equals with Lex Luthor or Mr. Terrific. And I'd also love for Matt Reeves to just be able to tell his story uninterrupted by anything else going on. But I can't lie and say that these two don't really complement each other. Then on the other hand, it'd be really fun to finally see a really fantastical Batman with an established Bat family finally on the big screen. Just keep Pattinson's version as an Elseworld on its own, allowing Reeves to just do whatever he wants in his own little section of his own DC universe. But a new Batman also brings its own set of problems. If the Robin we're doing is Damian like Gunn previously stated, does that mean we're once again getting a Batman that's 10 to 15 years older than Superman? Because if he is in a similar age bracket to David, and you're not cutting out any of those Robins, then you're looking at like 4 to 5 Robins, maybe even a couple of Batgirls, plus whoever else they want to throw in a really small window of time. Personally, if I was in charge and I had to start with Damian as Robin, as much as I love Steph and Tim, I'd probably end up doing something like this. The more obvious and glaring issue though, is that whoever they cast will inevitably be compared to Pattinson. And let's be real, that's a really tough bar to clear, especially acting wise. So honestly, I don't really know where I land on this yet. There are real pros and cons on each side. I'll forever be a proponent of creators being able to tell the stories they want with as much freedom as possible. So whether Gunn and Reeves eventually merge their visions, or we end up with two Batmans existing side by side, it's really going to come down to what Matt Reeves wants. Both paths come with risk and potential. And honestly, that uncertainty doesn't really scare me right now. If anything, it kind of excites me, because it shows that this new DCU isn't afraid to experiment. When I think back on it, Superman really was the perfect starting place. It reminded everyone what DC could be on the big screen if given the right vision and push, and it set the tone for everything else to follow. But what excites me the most isn't just that Superman worked, it's that all the projects coming out next year feel so different from one another, yet still connected. Lanterns doesn't feel like Supergirl, which doesn't feel like Clayface, which definitely doesn't feel like Peacemaker. And that's the point. Even that whole Batman situation, as messy as it seems right now, proves that this universe isn't trying to squeeze everything into one mold. It's letting creators tell the stories they want to tell, whether that means two Batmen at once, or a Superman sequel that looks nothing like the last one. For me, that unpredictability, that willingness to experiment, is what makes the new DCU so exciting right now. We're finally stepping into a comic book universe that feels like, well, comics. And if Gunn and company can continue that commitment to creativity and quality above everything else, then yeah, I think the future for DC Comics adaptations will be pretty damn bright. Also, James Gunn, give me an animated Wally West Flash project,
and my life is yours!
Appreciate you guys again for listening to me once again nerd out about comic book shit. Still a part of me that's kind of in disbelief that I'm actually hopeful about DC Comics films again. It's been a really long decade, not gonna lie. But remember to like and subscribe, and let me know what or if you're excited about the new DCU in the comments down below, and I'll talk to you guys next time.